Hey, what up, everybody? It's your boy Carson Fox with a recap of the Duke's Mayo Bowl 2023 Fox on West Virginia Mountaineer Sports, the last recap of a game of the 2023 season, and what a game and what a season it was. West Virginia completing their bowl game victory 30-10 in a victory over the North Carolina Tar Heels, and big for a few reasons. This was West Virginia's ninth victory of the season, just the 20th time in over 130 years of West Virginia football history that West Virginia won 9 games or more in a season, so historic from that objective number there. Mountaineer Nation took over the city of Charlotte, outperforming the Tar Heels fans in their home state of North Carolina. What a crowd it was. What a showing by the old gold and blue faithful. And we all got to witness head coach Neil Brown getting doused with a tub of mayo. What an awesome video that was. I'm cold, I'm wet, but I feel like a winner. I mark that in the history books, print that on some t-shirts. That was awesome to see. And then also great for the Big 12 conference that West Virginia, unlike UCF, came away with a victory. So not only bringing $4.8 million into the total pot for the conference to distribute to its members, but coming away with a victory that always means some bragging points, especially when it's going against the hated Atlantic Coast Conference, or what there's left of it. So, while I will say I'm happy West Virginia won, but it did not win with the kind of style points that I think could have quieted the haters who could have argued that North Carolina would have won this game had Drake May and some of the other guys that they had out for this game had played. I have no sympathy for North Carolina, its fans, and any of the haters who want to get on that side of the field and support them in that kind of way, because West Virginia had to go through this exact same thing 5 years ago when quarterback Will Grier decided to opt out of the Pinstripe Bowl game against Syracuse. West Virginia had to trudge through that terrible game. I think it was like Chris Chuginov was the quarterback, or somebody one of the backups in that game just was absolutely not to the same degree of Will Grier, and obviously West Virginia's offense didn't look like the same as it was, previously, with, like you saw against Oklahoma at the end of the regular season finale in that one. So, I don't have any sympathy for North Carolina and its fans in this contest not having its stars on the field. That's what you deal with when you have star players like this who opt out, or who have already hit the transfer portal. I know that's not necessarily the case in this, for Drake May, for Tez Walker, for Corey Gaynor, for Cedric Gray. Elijah Huzzy was an injury, so some of probably the big five that right there for North Carolina that would have made a big difference, namely May. So, but I just think ultimately what I'll say for this, I don't want to start this video off on a down note, but this is the way that I feel, wanting to give you some analysis of this game, to put it into context and feel. I just think this was a game full of missed opportunities. With the additional 18 points that I predicted, West Virginia, would have won the game by. So left those points to score out on the field, left on the table. But I do think that West Virginia did some things defensively that gives me a lot of hope for 2024, and I was very proud of this defensive performance in this contest for a few reasons, which I'll talk about. So, as I like to do in my recap videos, already 4 minutes in, I want to give you a full recap of the game, try and do it in 5 minutes or fewer. I know I originally started out talking about 2, but there's so much to break down in these games, so it's like I'll give it to you in 5 minutes or fewer. I'll give you some points of analysis, offensively, defensively, and then let's try and wrap this game up, because I want to talk about the 2023 season in totality, kind of give you a full season wrap in a separate video probably tomorrow. So just for today, I don't want to talk about everything in totality. I just want to talk about this Duke's Mayo Bowl to recap it for you. So starting up with the recap, I don't think it could have started out any better for West Virginia, as the first play from scrimmage, a 75-yard bomb from Garrett Green to Traylon Ray for a touchdown, 7-0 Mountaineers on the very first play, 11 seconds in. Carolina picked up 2 first downs on third downs on its first offensive series, but an Eddie Vestorinen, Caden Beiser sack on 3rd and long at the WVU 40 ultimately stalled out their 6-minute and 10-second drive, and that was a factor, time of possession in the first half. Inside its own 10 to start out the drive, Garrett Green and West Virginia offense picked up a first down off a North Carolina personal foul, but a Doug Nestor holding call ultimately forced West Virginia to punt. Penalties, the storyline in the first half. A 47-yard completion from quarterback Connor Harrell to wide receiver Gavin Blackwell advanced the Tar Heels into Mountaineer territory, and an Eddie Vestorinen enhanced the face penalty set up North Carolina 1st and goal at the West Virginia 10, but an overthrow by Harrell in the end zone was intercepted by safety Aubrey Burks, giving West Virginia back the ball up 7-0, still first quarter. Now, West Virginia drove 30 yards, but on 3rd and 1 gave the ball to true freshman running back DJ Oliver, who was getting the carry over Jalen Anderson, the redshirt junior on this team, and instead Oliver got the carry, who was spelling Jaheim White because White had 3 consecutive touches on the drive. Oliver fumbles on what would have been a first down pickup, setting up North Carolina with favorable field position. The Tar Heels went on an annoyingly slow 7+ minute drive, nickel and diming the Mountaineers down the field. I think large in part to Connor Harrell's running ability and Jordan Leslie's conservative defensive play calling, not really necessarily unleashing the dogs like we saw over the final 40 minutes of this game. But thankfully, on 3rd and 4 at the West Virginia 9, safety Marcus Floyd came up with a huge stop, stopping Harrell short a yard, and North Carolina was forced to kick a field goal. 28-yarder by Noah Burnett was good. 7-3 West Virginia, 34 left to play in the second quarter. Now, here's where I got annoyed by the Big Ten officiating crew led by Jerry McGinn, West Virginia's old nemesis from the Big East days. If you were like me, or just maybe I'm just a person who holds a grudge from those Big East days and can't get that guy out of his head, but I'll just never, all the calls that he would make and step here and step against West Virginia, just bothered me about Jerry McGinn from those years in the Big East. Always seemed to screw West Virginia in some of its biggest games. I can think back to like Cincinnati, South Florida. So here's the play that like really just drove me nuts to start it off. 2nd and 7 at the West Virginia 40. Green hits Hudson Clement on a beautifully called and executed 37-yard wide receiver screen, called back due to an ineligible receiver downfield, the left guard Tomas Remak. Now, they just never call this in the Big 12. They never call, especially in the second half of the season. I mean, how many times do you see this game against like Oklahoma State, Oklahoma, Kansas State? Like this was just par for the course. These Big Ten officials who just all they see is halfback dives from Iowa and Minnesota for 4 quarters every single week in and week out. They don't see plays like this in the Big Ten conference. So they call this just very ticky tack. Should have let this play go. I did not like this call whatsoever, and it really nullified West Virginia's drive at that point. So yeah, WVU stalled out, forced a punt. Thankfully, Ollie Straw has laser vision and can target North Carolina blockers downfield with his punts. This was a phenomenal punt by Ollie Straw. Just continues to get better in year 2. Cannot wait to see what he does in year 3. Punts the ball off ball. Paul Billups II's foot. Marcus Floyd pounces on it, and West Virginia takes over at the North Carolina 26. So what felt like a huge momentum swing back to West Virginia after losing it there offensively. But unfortunately, this is where North Carolina's defensive line really started to assert its dominance on the WVU run-blocking offensive line. Nestor was called again for holding, as Jaheim White really didn't have any running room on his 2 back-to-back rushing plays. WVU had to settle for a 52-yard field goal try, too far for Michael Hayes, no points, still 7-3, nearing halftime. Now, despite a 20-yard rush by Harrell on the first play of North Carolina's next drive, a Marcus Floyd sack, and rightfully called intentional grounding call And despite what color commentator Dan Mullen said, taking umbrage with the call, it wasn't a right call. It was intentional grounding. Didn't appreciate that from this officiating crew. Pinned North Carolina back, forcing them to punt. And then North Carolina's punter, Tom Maginus's punt was just a low line drive in which North Carolina's 4 defenders overran the play. Like if you look on my screen here, well, I'm trying to see where I see, like, oh man, crap. I'm trying to point it out on my screen here for you, where Bishop caught the ball. So he caught the ball like here, and the defenders were all up like here. It seemed like, for whatever reason. And all Bishop had to do was make one move, had blockers out in front of him, and he ran it back 78 yards for the touchdown. So 14-3, minute and 25 left to play in the second quarter. What an offensive, or what a special teams play, on back-to-back special teams play. First by punter Ollie Straw, then by new punt returner Beanie Bishop, who was in for the injured Preston Fox, who had been doing the punt returning duties for the Mountaineers this season, but didn't play in this game, still probably because of the concussion that he suffered from the Baylor game. So, unfortunately, North Carolina countered right back. A 23-yard pitch and catch to Blackwell, a pass interference call on Malachi Ruffin, and then 2 quick completions to wide receiver Christian Hamilton, and then Nate McCollum set up the 16-yard one-on-one fade route to UNC's wide receivers J.J. Jones, a Mountaineer legacy who chose the Tar Heels over the Mountaineers in recruiting, who clearly, very clearly pushed off Beanie Bishop on the play. Call is ruled an incompletion out of bounds, but the refs overturn it without doing anything about the clear push-off. Neil Brown is irate, rightfully so, gets a sideline warning, still 14-10 West Virginia with 27 seconds left, but should have been an offensive pass interference call. No points for the Tar Heels in a close game at that point in time. So totally understandable why Brown was irate. Poor officiating so far in that first half by this Big Ten crew and those couple of calls that I said that went against West Virginia that really hurt them. So, as West Virginia's done many times before this season, it knew how to score just before the half or end of game. 3 completions to wide receiver Hudson Clement, 1 for 32 yards, 1 for 15 yards, and then 1 for 14 yards down to the North Carolina 12. Set up a 30-yard chip shot for Michael Hayes as time expired in the half. Field goal was good, 17-10 going into the half with North Carolina receiving out of the break. A 35-yard return by wide receiver Chris Culliver gave the Tar Heels favorable field position at their own 40. 20 yards of rushing on 3 straight runs by Omarion Hampton, and a 13-yard pass play to McCollum gave you the feeling North Carolina was going to score, had momentum, but arguably the play of the year, a one-handed interception on a high pass back across the field, stolen away by Bandit linebacker Tyron Bradley, and a 24-yard return gave West Virginia the ball back at its 45-yard line. What a play by the Bandit linebacker Bradley, who's going to make waves in 2024. Unfortunately, once again, the West Virginia offense responded to Bradley's gift of a turnover with a 3-and-out on another series in which it couldn't run the ball. The WVU defense ran the North Carolina offense back off the field after 3 plays, but unfortunately, Day-Day Hawkins makes a boneheaded move on special teams, jumped off sides on 4th and 5, giving North Carolina a first down. Harrell and the UNC offense just got over midfield, went on 3rd and 2. Lee Koba comes up with a monster tackle on Omarion Hampton, pushing him back 3 yards. UNC working off nearly 5 minutes of clock, but West Virginia gets the ball back, 6:26 minutes in the third quarter. So 3rd and 4 at West Virginia's own 37-yard line. Garrett Green rushes for 7 yards for a first down, and UNC safety Antavius Lee reaches into Green's face mask to slowly punch him in the face. You could see him just reach in like there was no glass shield over or visor over Green's face and his mask, something maybe to think about for next season, the way that these defenders do in college football. Reaches in, tries to punch him in the face. He gets flagged for an extra 15 yards. Then on the very next play, Green hits Hudson Clement for 21 yards on a completion, but the drive stalls out trots Hayes for a 34-yard field goal, 20-10 West Virginia with 2:34 left to play in the third quarter. And this is when WVU's defense really started to eat. 2 sacks on the series, forces a bad pass by Harrell on 3rd and 13. UNC's forced to punt, and that's when I think West Virginia swung the momentum completely in their ways. Garrett Green says, enough of this crap. I'm taking this game over, just like he tried to do in the Baylor game. 48-yard run, started off at the middle of the field, hooked left, ran down the sidelines, 48 yards. Huge play in the context of this game, followed up by a 24-yard pitch, run, and hurdle by tight end Cole Taylor, and then an 11-yard house call by Jaheim White. 27-10, West Virginia, now up 3 scores, 12:43 to play in regulation. So at the UNC 19, 4 plays, but Harrell's harassed on each one of them. Turnover on downs. West Virginia with the ball nearly inside the North Carolina red zone to score. I think one of the coolest calls of the entire season. Neil Brown called a fake field goal run on 4th and 5 at the North Carolina 21. Holder Leighton Bechtel took off off the right side and with just really parted like the Red Sea, got all the way down to the UNC 4. So a 17-yard first down pickup, awesome play that Leighton Bechtel will never forget, with Phil Brady from the 2006 Sugar Bowl in attendance. So awesome special teams fake right there. Deja vu to go along with the West Virginia Twitter account's video from the day before the Mayo Bowl. So definitely some deja vu, I guess you could say, in that regard, but still Brady coming up with one of the biggest plays in West Virginia football history. So can't forget that. Unfortunately, though, Green was sacked on the very next play, loss of 10, and WU can't pick up the yards to get them back, this time actually settling for the field goal, 30-10, 7:53 to play, which proved to be the final score. An Asani Redwood sack, 2 quarterback hurries by Jalen Thornton, and a Jared Bartlett-Thornton sack combo highlighted West Virginia's 2 next defensive series, as the Mountaineers finished with a total of 7 sacks on the night for negative 47 yards. And that did it. That's your recap for that contest final. Once again, 30-10. Now let me give you some analysis on those points now, just about 17 minutes into this video. So first and foremost, I love the aggressive play calling on the very first play, taking advantage of really a shell-shocked young North Carolina secondary that was seeing a lot of gold and blue and juiced fans in the crowd, and they were more excited to be there, again, checking off one of the boxes of my 3 keys to victory. So you could just feel it from the onset that West Virginia just wanted to go out there and dominate this game. So in this game, or on this play, Green had the pass blocking up front of him. Ray beat the coverage downfield. Beautifully thrown ball, pitch, catch, touchdown. I just wish we could have seen more of this, honestly, in this game, instead of Neil Brown trying to be conservative and running the ball. And I think this is an area where Brown's got to become more comfortable with in 2024. Then there's a clear defect in an opponent, like I talked about in the preview video, that North Carolina coming into this game was without its best secondary man, without its best linebacker, was 99th in the country in pass defense. This should have been a Dana Holgerson-esque air raid type of day. Instead of just wanting to, instead of just running plays to run plays, I think that Brown needs to understand where there are defects in opponents and hammer those defects. You have to have a clear intention, I feel like, of what you're trying to do every single series. And you see that when West Virginia is able to do that at the ends of halves, at the end of games, when it just needs to turn a light switch on and knows exactly what to do. I think that's the way that you got to, especially when the game's within 1 score. When the game's with 2 scores or more and you want to work clock, you want to run the ball, start to just tear at a team's will and wear them down defensively, totally understandable. We see that constantly from Oklahoma. That's what they do. They get up. They get up multiple scores, and then they just unleash their will, and then they hammer you and frustrate you, and most of the times win. But whenever the game's within one score, you got to go out there, I feel like, and take advantage of defense's deficiencies. And that's something that I'm critical of, that West Virginia did not do enough in totality for the season. And I think that West Virginia could have done more in this game, especially in the first half, when it was pretty clear that the North and throughout, even into the third quarter, when North Carolina's defensive line was just stuffing West Virginia's rushing attack. West Virginia did a great job pass blocking, and I'll talk about that. But it's run blocking and giving Jaheim White room. Nada. I also think, to flip on the opposite side of the ball, the defense, this was the kind of defense that Jordan Leslie called over the game's last 40 minutes should have he also called the game's first 20 minutes. Sending the dogs after Connor Harrell, not allowing North Carolina to hang in there and run clock, because that's what they did. They wanted to try and muck this game up. They wanted to try and win ugly, like it was an Iowa game. And you could see that out of Mac Brown's face. I know he would never say that, but that's the way that he wanted to. He wanted to win this in a low-scoring affair, some way, somehow. That was the only way they were going to win the ball game. And just by sitting back on your heels in zone coverage and not sending multiple blitzers out of your front seven in the first 20 minutes, just let North Carolina hang in there. Finally, Leslie saw that deep into the second quarter and just said, okay, if this guy doesn't see his immediate first read, and dropping into his second and third reads and escaping the pocket, like, we have to have multiple defenders coming from on stunts and rotating our defensive line, sending some guys out of the secondary. You saw Marcus Floyd do this great in this contest of getting sent on blitzes, and then the defensive line really started to eat in the final two-thirds of this contest, wearing down this North Carolina offensive line. It wasn't a good North Carolina offensive line. Harrell was obviously, was a deer in the headlights at times. It was clear that he was a freshman quarterback facing for the first time against a Power 5 defense. So West Virginia was bailed out by two turnovers, the first Burke's interception and then the Bradley one, but those could have easily been 14 points the other way for North Carolina, so you can't forget about that, I feel like, in the context of this game, is that those interceptions just like so many times for West Virginia this season, bend but don't break, bailed out by turnovers, and that's how they win the ball game. So I would have liked to see that defensive effort that we saw over the game's last two-thirds for a complete 60 minutes. But thankfully the crowd was involved, kept West Virginia engaged, didn't lull them to sleep like the Houston game, and got better as the game went along. Now, DJ Oliver's fumble was a momentum killer. Thankfully, Beanie Bishop bailed West Virginia out again, what feels like for the 1,000th time of the season, with his punt return for a touchdown. As again, in place for Preston Fox. I think that just makes Beanie Bishop's NFL draft profile that much better, showing that he can do it also on special teams as well as defensively. And for Oliver, I'm sure that play's going to hang around in his head all off season. And the team's probably going to dog him about that, I would feel like, throughout spring practice and over the summer. And I don't think it's necessarily something that needs to give us any sort of worry that West Virginia, what's West Virginia got to do about its third string running back? Like, if third string running back is your biggest worry, then you're pretty well set. I feel like, as a team. Again, who's going to be relied upon, namely between C.J. Donaldson and Jaheim White. But it just goes to show, and I love Jaheim White too, don't get me wrong, but how important C.J. Donaldson is. He's still, I feel like, the heart and soul of this West Virginia offense. He is if Green's the straw that stirs the drink, I feel like Donaldson's still the drink itself. So you're enjoying this West Virginia offense because of what C.J. Donaldson can do and the fear that he strikes in opponents. And just go back and if you look at some of the comments by the Oklahoma fans after that contest on my recap video, everyone said they wanted C.J. Donaldson. They just love what they see out of him. So real recognize real. C.J. Donaldson definitely missed in this contest, but either way, I think that should have been Jalen Anderson's carry. I don't know why Neil Brown wanted to turn. I mean, maybe it's because of how big Oliver is, but I think that Jalen Anderson just deserves that carry in that situation. But that was a miscue. The first half penalties, like I talked about enough already, it feels like I just give a thumbs down, especially the Remack and eligible receiver downfield call, and the missed offensive pass interference push off, no call on Jones. I think that gave North Carolina their one and only touchdown in this contest, and that's what kept the game close, kept it from being a runaway game for West Virginia. Not only the officiating, but also the way that North Carolina was able to work the clock, hold on to longer possessions, run the clock. I mean, I feel like the first half, in just like actual time, not total game time play, only went a little over an hour. So it just was a really, really fast first half, I felt like. And it was because North Carolina was running the play clock down, really not going up tempo, just working the clock. And that's why West Virginia just didn't have enough time. If there would have been another quarter's worth of play in this contest, I think West Virginia could have got up there and scored probably 2 more touchdowns, but not enough time to be had. And also, I think North Carolina got to give a lot of credit to their defensive line, winning the battle for the line of scrimmage in the run game against West Virginia's offensive line. Jaheim White was held to just 50 yards rushing on 12 carries, and besides the 48-yarder that was the game breaker by Garrett Green early in the fourth quarter, he was held to just what I'll see. Then, looking at his total numbers with the sack yardage counting against him, 11 yards lost on the sack. So he just had 7 carries for 27 yards beyond that big, long game breaker for 48 on the play. So really, when it exclude that one play and then look at the design runs by Green and White being held to just, 77 yards together total, that West Virginia's offensive line just didn't get enough of a push, I felt like, against K'Mon Rucker, against Miles Murphy. I give Eccles power. Got to give a lot of credit to this UNC front 7. It came hard to play. Schemed against West Virginia's rushing attack and said, you got to beat us through the air. West Virginia did that a few times. Again, Neil Brown really didn't necessarily commit to it, I feel like, as enough as he should have to throw the ball more than he did in this contest. But there were a couple of times, when it really proved to be pivotal that still Green only having 12 completions on the day, but for over 200 yards. So can throw the deep ball, can pick up those chunk plays. So I think that, but I will say about West Virginia's offensive line, its pass blocking was excellent, I felt like. Once again, an 85 Pro Football Focus grade by Wyatt Milam for the day, the best lineman that West Virginia has. Just gives me a lot of hope that Garrett Green will continue to develop his pocket presence like he has over the last final 5 games of the year. He's going to rely on his offensive line to give him time. Doesn't have to rush things, doesn't have to get all anxious and stressed and just throw the ball as hard as he possibly can downfield. He can settle in, he can put a little touch on his throws, can be accurate, and complete the balls for, chunk plays instead of overthrowing them high or long on the play. So gives me some hope there. I think these were great days by wide receivers Hudson Clement and Traylon Ray. Clement, 5 catches for 89 yards on the day. Traylon Ray, 3 catches for 91 yards and a touchdown on the day. Would have liked to see Devin Carter get a catch in his final collegiate game in his home state against an old rival from when he was with NC State, but oh well. Ray coming up clutch. Hudson Clement, I think, very clearly positioning himself as that number 2 wide receiver for 2024. If Ray's your one, I think Trey, I don't know how Jaden Bray fits into it, but I really feel good about Hudson Clement. I think he's one of the unsung heroes for this season. I can't believe I'm saying this, being a guy who came into the season as a walk-on. I got to go back to when I was listening to the spring game last spring, and sometimes my good buddy from college, Nick Farrell, who graduated a year above me at Waynesburg. Sometimes when I listen to his calls of the spring games, I just think to myself, okay, he's got to be optimistic for West Virginia here. And when he said in that spring game that, like, this coaching staff was really high on Hudson Clement when he caught a ball in the spring game and, like, think that he could be a contributor, I was like, who the heck is Hudson Clement? Was this guy even, is he even a scholarship player? Did West Virginia really even recruit him? Like, going back through my Rivals history to see where's Hudson Clement on here, I didn't think much of him at the time, but wow. He's got hands. He's got ball skills, put them on display once again, runs really good routes, and has really good chemistry, it feels like, with Garrett Green. And we saw how important that was in confidence between Will Greer and David Sills over their careers. So I think Clement is only going to help Garrett Green, and Green's only going to help Hudson Clement. So it's a symbiotic relationship. So liked what I saw out of him. And, of course, the deep ball catch by Traylon Lay on the first play. Look how big. Did you see him pregame? Like, boy's already put on weight. I cannot wait until he gets into the weight room with Mike Joseph over this offseason and through the summer. I wouldn't be surprised if, he came in at 190. If he plays up at 225 or like 215 by the start of season as a true sophomore, stealing, sky is the limit, I feel like, for Traylon Ray in this offense. And then the last thing I'll say is about this defense. What an effort. 7 sacks as a unit, even with Sean Martin in and out of this game due to an ankle sprain on that defensive line. Tamia Durage coming in and filling in great for him, I felt like. Sonny Redwood getting a sack. I think there were standout performers at all 3 levels for various reasons in this game. Shining performance, I felt like, for WVU's senior defensive leader, who I really hate to see go. Would love to have him back onto the field for another year in an old gold and blue uniform. Feel like we were cheated out of a couple of years that he was playing at Syracuse and then at the JUCO level. But an awesome last effort by Lee Koba, 12 tackles and a tackle for loss in this contest, that big one that I talked about in the recap. The interceptions by Aubrey Burks and Tyron Bradley, huge. As I said, very important that West Virginia got those. Holding Amarion Hampton, one of the best running backs in college football, a Doak Walker Award finalist, to just 62 yards rushing on 19 carries. Awesome effort in totality by this West Virginia defense to hold him to just that, under 100 yards. And at the end of the day, this was the 3rd fewest points allowed for the season in a game. Week 3 against Pitt held Pitt just 6, held BYU to just 7 in game number 9, finishing the season nearly a full point allowed per game below my goal of 27 points per game. So awesome to see there. That West Virginia could lower that points per game allowed average by putting up a 10 burger in this game. So love that. And at the end of the day, this is where I'll conclude this video. The second bowl win for Neil Brown as head coach of the Mountaineers, and the widest margin of victory for West Virginia in a bowl game since the 2012 Orange Bowl versus Clemson. So awesome to say that. Awesome to say that, given the way that West Virginia performed back in 2016 with Skylar Howard in that Russell Athletic Bowl against Miami, left a sour taste in your mouth. In 2018, in that Pinstripe Bowl, excuse me, against a bad or overrated Syracuse team, in my opinion, and not getting Will Greer for that contest, not winning those 2 bowl games, and then it just kind of being lost in purgatory. I mean, the Liberty Bowl felt great at that point in time, in 2020, when we didn't know if we were going to have college football, get West Virginia getting to a postseason. But again, you were playing Army, and you pulled it out at the very, very end, thanks to heroics by Austin Kendall, who was really benched for Jared Deggy. Jared Deggy plays so poorly in 2020. You got to bring Kendall in to save the day, and he did, thankfully, with TJ Simmons. So finally, it feels good to beat a Power 5 opponent in a bowl game. Both teams 8-4 to get to 9 wins, and I think it does. Check that box off of what I talked about and like my things that Neil Brown and staff need to do before 2024 to put West Virginia in its best position possible. Check that box. Winning the bowl game, winning it by multiple touchdowns, coming up with a big flip in getting a 4-star wide receiver on high school recruiting National Signing Day, and doing well so far up to December 28th at 1:45 p.m. Eastern Time in retention and transfer recruiting. So unfortunately, it's right back to that. We're going right back into the depths of the dark webs of college football. Now it's back to roster management season. Can West Virginia ink commitments with Country Roads Trust in guys like Nico Marchiol, C.J. Donaldson, Aubrey Burks, Sean Martin, just some pieces that we haven't necessarily received confirmation on just yet, more so on the defensive side of the ball, but that's where West Virginia has been most active, it feels like, in the transfer portal so far. So I just think completely blowing out the media's expectations and surpassing even my own set goal for 8 wins on the season when West Virginia was picked to finish 14th, dead last in the Big 12 conference, I think completes one of the best overachieving jobs of a program in the Power 5 for this 2023 season. So I don't want to say like Texas, West Virginia's back. I think there's still more. Like 2024, I don't want to look too far ahead to what I'm going to talk about in a couple of videos down the line, but looking at some of these opponents that West Virginia has on its 24 schedule, whoa, totally different than this 2023 schedule. So this is where schedule, I feel like, is going to matter. So don't want to get too far ahead of myself. Just want to enjoy this. I want Mountaineer Nation to enjoy this bowl game victory. Eat some mayo, just like I have in my thumbnail. Go get your buddy, and cheers to the West Virginia Swami. Forgot to pull him out there. I apologize for that in my preview video a couple of days ago and predicting the score. But yay for the Swami predicting this game right, finishing 9-4 on the season, and now he's going to go enjoy some Duke's Mayo after this game, after this video. So that was just such a fun one. I just think the announcers had a good time with it. I think the fans had a good time with it. I think Neil Brown had a good time with it, and I think it just proved it had a lot of. It just didn't feel so sterile. Like sometimes, even some of these New Year's 6 games, it feels like bowl games just are treated too much like a business trip, that there's got to be some fun involved. And I think just with that atmosphere, excuse me, that the Duke's Mayo Bowl team and staff and the promotional efforts around it was just really, really fun with Duke's Mayo. So I think this was a lot of fun for this one. Might have to end up getting a t-shirt out of it because of it. So I'll review the 2023 season in totality tomorrow here on my channel. If you enjoyed this video, like it. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this game, so leave your comments here on YouTube. Like the video once again so more Mountaineer fans can see it across YouTube and social media, and go back. Take a look at what I said in the preview video and how it matches up with this recap video. Take a look at some of my others on my channel, and if you like those videos, including this one, please hit the subscribe button. Love to have you as one of my subscribers for this channel to talk Mountaineer football. And we still have a lot more to talk about, I feel like, for the 2023 season in totality before we look ahead on to the next chapter immediately into 2024. So hail West Virginia, let's go.